This is a time of great opportunity for BHP. The resources we produce are essential to the energy transition and global economic growth. Our products are fundamental to the way we live now and into the future. Now more than ever, we need to provide the world the resources it needs responsibly and sustainably. Imagine what we can achieve if we continue to think big.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the International Council on Mining and Metals ICMM Leaders Panel, focusing on our unique supply chain collaboration to solve some of the mining industry's biggest safety, health and environmental performance challenges. And a warm welcome to our panelists, whom I'll formally introduce shortly, and who are joining us today from around the world. Thank you very much for making the time today and for your ongoing leadership of this initiative. Our session today focuses on the progress made in transforming today's fleet of mining vehicles into tomorrow's new generation of cleaner, safer vehicles. This progress is being achieved through ICMM's Innovation for Cleaner, Safer Vehicles Initiative, ICSV, which brings together 27 of the world's leading mining companies and 19 of the largest original equipment manufacturers, known as OEMs, to collaborate in a non-competitive space to accelerate the development of a new generation of mining vehicles and improve existing ones. Before we begin, just a few words about the format. I'll spend a few minutes setting the scene before our journalists make their introductory comments, followed by a moderated discussion. We're really pleased to bring you some different perspectives on this important topic from both the mining industry and the OEMs who are developing the technologies that are transforming the mining and metals industry, making it cleaner and safer. Our speakers today are at the forefront of creating positive disruption in the industry as members of our CEO advisory group leading ICMM's Innovation for Cleaner, Safer Vehicles initiative. We're joined today by Denise Johnson, Group President of Caterpillar, and CEOs from two of our company members, Mike Henry of BHP and Nick Holland of Goldfields. Welcome everyone. ICMM aims to strengthen the social and environmental performance of the mining and metals industry and to build recognition of its contribution to local communities and society at large. And we know that we cannot do this by ourselves. Partnership, collaboration and leadership are at the heart of our mission and are critical elements in addressing some of the mining industry's biggest sustainability challenges. We created the collaborative ICSV initiative to address three main performance challenges. Firstly, in 2018, transport and mobile equipment accidents accounted for about 30% of the fatalities at the mining operations of our company members, the highest single cause of fatalities. Secondly, almost all underground mining equipment is diesel powered, and exposure to elevated emissions of diesel particulate matter, or DPM, has been linked to negative health effects. And thirdly, the mining industry is currently a significant emitter of greenhouse gases, with mining vehicles usually accounting for between 30 to 50%, and in some cases up to 80% of the total direct emissions at a mine site. Globally, there are around 28,000 large mine hauling trucks in service, emitting 68 million tonnes of carbon dioxide per year. The initiative has work streams devoted to each challenge, aiming to make collision avoidance technology available to mining companies by 2025, minimize the operational impact of DPM by 2025 as well, and to introduce greenhouse gas emission-free surface mining vehicles by 2040. While the mining industry has had a reputation for traditionally being a slow adopter of technology and change, the ICSV initiative is ambitious and innovative. It provides a safe space for OEMs and mining companies to work openly to help develop solutions and overcome silos within the industry and between companies while still operating under anti-competition and antitrust rules. The convening power of ICMM is important in achieving these ambitions. Representing around a third of the mining and metals industry, our membership offers a critical mass for change, creating market pull, and in turn this builds the widespread confidence needed to accelerate the level of innovation investment required to develop, trial and scale up commercial solutions for the industry. 2 years ago, our council met in Melbourne and together we launched the initiative at IMARC. Since then, we've made significant progress towards understanding what is needed to meet the ambitions. We've grown from 11 OEM participants to 19, demonstrating that having aligned objectives and speaking with an aligned voice is generating momentum in the industry. We've developed resources and tools to help companies track and achieve progress, which are all available on our website, ICMM.com, for use by the wider industry. Lately, we've achieved a significant milestone in having a clearer picture of where operations are today, their maturity in respect to our ambitions. ICMM members have undertaken assessments that indicate they're at an early stage of maturity and show what progress will look like for each ambition. This is helping them to plan to adopt new technologies and to design the mining infrastructure to be ready for such technologies. The initiative has achieved one of its critical goals related to the ambitions by sending strong signals to OEMs and third-party technology providers on what is needed to accelerate development and the adoption of technology across the industry, including what equipment and infrastructure are required, by when, as well as the magnitude of these changes. So with these opening remarks, I'd like to invite Nick, Mike and Denise to give some of their own introductory remarks. And I've asked them to respond to an initial framing question, which is, how does this initiative fit into your company's overall strategy? What is unique about it? And what value has it brought to your company and could further bring to you and the wider industry? So I'd like to start with Nick and then move to Mike and then Denise. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tom, and hello everybody. Good to be on this forum today. I think the first issue I'd like to mention is that health and safety of our people, and I think not just for our company, but for all of the companies as part of this initiative, is the most important aspect that we need to care about. And so with that in mind, in particular, collision avoidance systems underground and also in our open pits are fundamental to the achievement of this goal. In addition, we know that we need to reduce diesel particulate matter underground as well. We know that today there are solutions available to us whereby we can deploy these pretty easily and pretty quickly. And so one of the things that we've done in our company, which I think is very similar to what other companies are doing, is to make sure that we roll out what's available today, that we work with our suppliers, with the OEMs in particular, and retrofit where necessary, but also just roll out these technologies across our operations. We know that the progress we need to make to the ultimate goal is going to be made in steps. We cannot just wait. And so with that in mind, going towards implementing what's available today is going to make a big difference to us in the future. So that's the first most important objective. The second thing I'd like to say is that the collaboration that we're seeing within the ICMM and also with the OEMs has been tremendous in actually understanding a current baseline of where the industry is and where our suppliers are and where we need to go. So I'm delighted that we're working together to create a common baseline, understand where we are today, what we've achieved, and importantly, where we need to go to. We're pretty close, we believe, in getting a consolidated position for our industry that can help us to progress to the next levels. And once we've done that, we can then actually move forward and say, where do we want to get to? What is the future baseline? What are the goals we'd like to achieve into the future? What is the time frame for us to adopt? One, what's out there? And secondly, to work out how we get to the ultimate goal over the next years. As we've seen, we've set targets to 2025. We've set more ambitious targets to 2040. And we know that this is a trajectory that we're on. It's going to take some time for us to get there. But I'm pretty confident that with the work we've done to date, we're on the right track, that this initiative in particular over the last 2 years has made tremendous progress, and we're starting to understand where we are and importantly, how we can work together, collaborate to move forward as an industry. So a lot of work has been done. A lot of work remains for us to do in the future, but I'm excited that we're on the journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Mike.
Well, good morning, Tom. It's great to be here today with you, Nick and Denise, and everybody else who's joining the conference. I'll build on what Nick has said. So I'm quite optimistic about the opportunity that this initiative presents for us to make a step change in industry on the safety, health, and greenhouse gas emissions front. And that can come through both acceleration of deployment of existing technologies, as Nick has referenced. But I also think that a big part of what we're going to unlock here is the development or advancement of new technologies, because we have a critical mass of participants within the ICMM, equipment manufacturers coming together to both advance the deployment of existing technologies, but also to get clear on what the industry needs for future, which can then help inform the design efforts or development efforts of the OEMs. And of course, any solution that gets built into design, so solutions to make vehicles safer, cleaner, and if that gets built into the design itself, that solution is going to be more sustainable. Now, from a BHP perspective, we've been focused on becoming cleaner for a long time. Diesel particulate matter, as Nick said, carbon emissions. And because of that focus, today, on a relative size basis, we have the lowest Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions footprint of any of the major miners. But the world doesn't stand still. We've recently made further commitments. One of those commitments is to Scope 1 and Scope 2 by a further 30% by 2030. Now, a big part of that is going to come through a move to more renewable energy, particularly in the first half of the next decade. But we also know that to achieve our 30% ambition, it is going to require us to remove diesel from our equipment on site. And I see this initiative as allowing us to accelerate the design of the solutions that will allow us to do that in the most cost-effective way possible. And acceleration is important because given the capital investment decisions required and the timing of those, our natural fleet replacement cycles, the quicker we're able to determine what solutions we're going to go with, the better. Now, on the safety front, year in, year out, we've been improving safety within the company, but we've recently announced internal to BHP a fatality elimination project. And part of that project involves us inviting in others to help us solve for safety on site. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, Tom, vehicle interactions are one of the leading causes of safety incidents in a company like ours. And so this initiative is going to help us achieve that ambition that we have of wholly eliminating fatalities from BHP as well.
Thank you, Mike. And now we'll turn it to the OEMs. Denise.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Certainly, Caterpillar's very pleased to be an OEM participating in this important ICMM initiative. Starting with the Caterpillar strategy, our strategy aligns very well with the initiative. Our purpose statement is to help our customers build a better world. So it falls directly in line with the initiative. Certainly, I think the highlights of the initiative is brought together some real deep industry experts. The team has established really clear and ambitious goals around safety and sustainability, and the problems are being worked in an open communication forum, which I think is unique in this kind of environment, industry-wide, to build a path to achieve the goals. So, Caterpillar, along with the other OEMs who are participating, recognize that safety and sustainability are foundational table stakes. But I think, the key is, while we've incrementally improved, we do realize the bar is rising and it's higher than ever before. The ICMM membership represents 30% of the mining and metals market, which is significant. So I think as you think about what this collective group can do, it can really heavily influence the entire mining industry. And I think it's also very unique and special to see an industry expert like this one, or effort like this one, coming together around solving a set of major challenges that all of us face. I think as we look at, the self-assessments have really helped us to form a shared understanding of where the industry is as a whole, but it also really provides us an opportunity to have discussions about what steps can be taken to move each individual company and site towards the end goals. So, in summary, really, Caterpillar's excited and proud to be a part of this transformational effort, and I do think we're going to see some real change take place as a result of it.
Thanks, Denise. And I think all three of you mentioned collaboration, and it has been an interesting process. Getting, of course, the OEMs are all competing, and we're a collaborative of members, but the members are also all competing, and this kind of deep collaboration has been was initially quite hard to get off the ground, but I think we've really seen some of the progress over the last 2 years that can be achieved when you get around the same table trying to solve a common problem. You did mention challenges, Denise, so maybe I can pick up and ask you to talk to what do you see as having been the main challenges of this process and partnership, and what are the key learnings to take away from the process itself over the last 2 years? Perhaps I'll turn to Nick and Mike to cover that question as well afterwards.
Right. I think through this initiative, we've really built a stronger partnership between the mining companies and the OEMs. The collaboration's taken a lot of time. And so when you think about challenges, it's getting share of mind and time and effort so that we can move the process forward. But I think, that's been a great investment that definitely is paying off. All of the OEMs and all of the companies have different models, and we've had to focus on developing a common way of working together with a common language and common definitions. This also really took us some time. So, we've had to build a strong foundation so that we can move forward, and I think we're ready to do that now. Certainly, this model has allowed the OEMs to understand not only the challenges that are faced by the miners, but also the urgency. And I think that's the real change, is the urgency to solve the challenges sooner versus later. As OEMs, we recognize that we have to provide a roadmap for improvement solutions and development paths, even if all of the end game solutions haven't been fully technically developed. I think the initiative has also let the miners understand the technical and commercial challenges that need to be overcome, as well as the operational challenges and the investments that are required to make progress. So, as I look at it, the OEMs and the mining companies have really commenced on working the initiatives and discovered opportunities for increasing communication, understanding, which will allow us to collaborate and really develop solutions that will take us forward.
Nick, what would you add to that?
I think there's a burning platform here, Tom, in the sense that we know that we have to change. We know that we haven't got much time to change. So that creates an important ingredient for us to work together. So we found each other, the fact that we have this forum, we have a number of the OEMs working with us through the ICMM, and there's also bilateral discussions taking place between individual companies and the various OEMs. And so I think the biggest challenge was getting us together, and I'm pleased to say that we are together. And the next biggest challenge is to understand our problems. The OEMs can only be as effective as we make them in terms of understanding our challenges. And we are working with them on our solutions. And they know too that mines are very different. There's no one fit size over here. You have to look at every particular circumstance, every operation, and we've got to work out what fits. So the fact that we are collaborating, the fact that we're starting to understand each other's issues and challenges, I think is a massive step forward. That said, the caution is we're only on the front end of this journey and this process. So there's a lot of work for us to do. But I'd like to see that we work together to map out the short, medium, and longer term goals that we want to achieve and have some checkpoints along the way. Are we actually doing the right things today to make sure that we're going to be successful tomorrow? Because there's no point going down a road and find in a year or two's time, we've got to reset the course and we weren't on the right pathway. We have to try and understand the new technologies that are coming out. We have to try and understand the interrelationship between different types of equipment we have on the operations, bearing in mind we're working with a multitude of different suppliers. So it's quite complex, and I don't think we've got it all worked out. But the fact that we're committed to work together on this journey, I believe will give us the solutions in time. So we're going to learn a lot over the next year, over the next couple of years. But let's remember that we should work together to adopt what we can now. We shouldn't try and get the perfect solution, to repeat what I said earlier. And also bear in mind that it's going to be a very incremental process with trial and error to get to the final solution. But I think we will be successful because we're determined to be successful as an industry and with our suppliers. So I'm very encouraged by the progress to date and the fact that we know that we've got a lot of work ahead of us.
And definitely we take the point that we mustn't get ahead of ourselves and need to take stock on a regular basis to make sure that we're not leapfrogging. Mike, anything to add in terms of challenges? What we've learned?
Look, I'd probably raise a broader kind of an overarching challenge, and it's been alluded to by Nick and Denise, and it's this concept of chicken and egg. So I spoke earlier about some of the commitments that BHP has made in the climate change space over time. And yet, you know, the pressure is always on us to go further, faster. But as a executive, one of the dilemmas I always face is, well, to what extent do I make a commitment without actually, or what's the degree of confidence that I need to have in how we'll go about achieving that commitment at the time I make the commitment? And so in a world where there's lots of different competing technologies out there, it's not clear yet which one of those is going to win out over time. It can become quite difficult for me to know which one I want to lock into, with the risk being, of course, that once I've locked into it, it's going to be 10 to 15 years before there's another opportunity to go with a different technology. And so there can be a reluctance at times to lock down on a solution. But then from an OEM perspective, in the absence of companies like BHP being clear on what it sees as the preferred technology over time, it can be quite difficult for them then to invest what needs to be invested in advancing and improving those technologies. And so somehow we need to be able to break through this. I think this forum is providing a great platform for us to be able to do that, because we're getting all of the key players around the table on the industry side, on the OEM side, where we're able to have discussion about the pros and cons of different pathways, different technologies. And hopefully through doing that, we will build more alignment. OEMs can have greater confidence in the dollars and effort that they're investing in development. And then from a industry or a company perspective, we'll have greater knowledge, insight, and confidence in what's coming at us to then start making some of the commitments that we need to make.
Yeah, and so I'm hearing a common theme from all three of you, which is that, you know, the value, of course, for the OEMs is not just sort of a collective signal, but also the urgency of the priority for the ICMM members. And then on the other hand, the point that you've made, Mike, which is you know, that we come away with a much better understanding of where these different technologies lie and exactly when we get to have to make the decision about chicken and egg. Let me ask another question. I'd like to ask the three of you what within your companies, what kind of disruption you've seen from this initiative so far. You know, this isn't just about technology. This is also about culture change and shifting attitudes within companies. And what impact has this had within your company and the process and the initiative in terms of changing how people think about this? And perhaps I'll start with Nick.
Yeah, look, first of all, I think in any mining company, the important thing is to be sustainable over time. And sometimes people get confused with what we mean by sustainable. We need to be profitable in the long run. And at the same time, we need to be safe and we need to create a healthy environment for our people. So the way we sell this to the 16,000 people who work for us is to say that first and foremost, if we believe in our core value of health and safety, then surely we should be embracing things like collision avoidance, diesel particulate controls, etc. This should be almost a no-brainer for our business. And I think over the last year or so, I think we've got that now firmly embedded into the culture and the DNA of the company. In terms of things like greenhouse gas emissions and reductions that we want to achieve over time, you know, we've really embraced the whole renewable concept of saying, you know, let's try and reduce our carbon emissions. You know, let's move away from fossil-fired energy to lower carbon gas, etc., to wind and solar. And we've actually made quite a lot of progress over the last 18 months. So we'll continue with that. I think the pathway for us that is less clear is how we would reconfigure our surface operations beyond just changing the energy sources to further reduce carbon emissions. And at the same time, we're telling people, guess what? If you can reduce carbon emissions, you're probably going to reduce your energy costs, thereby feeding back into the business and making us more sustainable over time, as we know that input costs will be under pressure into the future. So the area that we'll be scratching our heads on, Tom, over the next couple of years is to figure out how we're going to change the way we mine in our open pits in particular. Are we going to be able to move away from the conventional diesel trucks and loaders, etc.? Are we going to move on to something else? What are the energy sources that we'll have to use for that? What are the challenges in getting those energy sources? Are we going to move to things like input crushing and conveying? You need to have economies of scale to look at a lot of those initiatives. So there's quite a bit of work for us to do on that front. In the meantime, let's not forget that we should have things like diesel filters on all of our underground equipment. Now that should almost be a non-negotiable for us in our business, and that's what we're actually going to do over the next 12 to 18 months to the extent we haven't done it. Collision avoidance, level 7, level 8, even up to level 9, depending on local legislation and what the requirements are. And as I've said, I think the biggest near-term contribution we can make to reducing GHG is enhancing the available renewable opportunities that are there. Wind, solar, etc., battery. And we know that battery technology is going to evolve further. One exciting project that I will mention is that at our Tarkwa mine in Ghana, which moves about 90 million tons a year, produces 500,000 ounces a year of gold, one of the largest open pit gold mines in the world. Now we're looking at a trial between LNG and diesel on our trucks, which will significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions if we're successful. So I'm very excited that we're doing a trial in 2021 with 4 trucks. And if that's successful, I think we'll be rolling that out to the fleet, and that can be a step change in reducing carbon emissions. And importantly, also reducing our costs. So we're achieving a whole lot of benefits at the same time. So I would say that our team is very bought into this. They like the concept, and it's now embedded into things like balanced scorecards, to the individual objectives that we set for our regions, for the individual objectives that we set for our senior managers throughout the organization. And people get it. They like the concept, and they're bought into it.
Good. Yeah, well, interesting points you made there. And it was interesting watching the Borden mine in Canada, which was one of the first all-electric mines, where there were lots of employee reservations and also reservations about the cost. But one of the big differences for the workforce was how improved their morale was once they found, when they experienced working with electric vehicles instead of diesel underground. It was just so much different. Denise, what about within Caterpillar? How has this been seen, and has it disrupted the way people inside the company think about this?
Well, it really has. And if you really think about how this is really changing how we develop product, as well as, kind of that customer focus, listening to what the customer is saying. And, we talked earlier about, that increased sense of urgency around having a roadmap of technology solutions that can be developed in a nimble way when we still don't have really that roadmap completely on what technology we're going to land on. And so it has really forced us to step back and take an opportunity to listen more than ever before, but also then develops more of a sense of urgency around solutions that maybe are a little forward thinking from where we would normally be in kind of an incremental way, but we're going to have to take some leaps forward really and place our bets in certain areas and experiment, and we're going to have to partner in order to do that with mining companies. So it really is an exciting time from a culture change perspective, where it's more listening, bigger sense of urgency, and then also remembering that technology itself isn't the silver bullet. We also, a lesson learned from introducing technologies like autonomy is that you have to look at not only the implementation of whatever technology you're working on, but you also have to look at the processes and the people, and change management is a big piece of it. So, you know, how the mine design comes together and how you knit all of that together really is going to optimize that solution. So it's thinking much more holistically than developing a single piece of equipment for a specific application. It's thinking much more broadly than we ever had before. So we're going, you know, from a machine focus to, you know, really a customer site focus with this change. So it's an exciting time to be a part of the industry, honestly.
It always is. Mike, anything to add?
Look, Tom, I'd probably just say that I see this as greasing the wheels of the disruption that we need to affect within the company. So, you know, we're pursuing a number of related priorities as a company. I spoke about greenhouse gas emissions earlier, fatality elimination, and so on. But the fact that we now have this initiative sitting behind it, I think the maturity assessments that we've undertaken as part of this initiative have actually helped us internally to get line of sight using common language, common frameworks at where each of our operations are at and what needs to be done in the coming years to advance these priorities. And of course, if our people are able to see other companies taking similar action or some of the communication coming out of this initiative, it will embolden them to move faster on this journey. So like Denise, I'm pretty excited about what this brings or is going to bring to the industry in the coming years.
Well, it's great to hear that the frameworks are being used and that are helping catalyze those kind of conversations. I'd like to ask a more open question, which is what next? And I'd like to sort of broaden it. What next for this initiative? But perhaps also, where could we apply this kind of process? On what other challenges could we apply this type of process? You know, this has been very experimental. I think we've shown that we can chalk up some initial successes and that it's got some clear direction, and it's still got some way to go. But where next on this, and also what else could we roll this out? You know, what other problems could we use to this process to solve? Perhaps who would like to go first? Who's had a chance to think about that? Mike, would you like to kick off on that?
Sure. So the what next, that, you know, at the end of the day, I think we're all feeling good about this initiative so far. Of course, the proof is in the eating, and it actually has to get translated into action on site with an acceleration in the deployment of both available technologies, but also the development and deployment of new technologies. And so I think as we turn from having conducted a lot of assessments, built the relationships, aligned on intent, it's going to be incumbent upon us as ICMM members and the OEMs to actually double down now and ensure that we're making the commitments that we're needing to make, investing the dollars that need to be invested to leverage what we've created for the good of all of us and for the world. Where else could we apply this? Well, the fundamental bringing together of both ICMM members and equipment manufacturers is going, you know, it's where do you start? There's going to be lots of opportunity to apply that. I think at this point in time, it's been on vehicles on site, but many of the ICMM members will also have industrial processes on their sites, be it smelting or refining, and so on. So there may be opportunities in that space for us to look at how we go about removing diesel from some of those processes, for example. There may be other things to look at in the supply chain as to how we go about processing and moving material. So I don't think there's any one thing, Tom, per se. I think what we've established here is a different engagement model that, you know, in the past has proven difficult, or it's proven elusive for us, and sometimes it gets brought back to competition reasons or something else. But framed in the right way, bringing participants within the industry and those from outside the industry together with the right kind of framework and governance in place, I think can be quite powerful. And so I think, again, that's going to be an opportunity for us. Once we advance this maybe a little bit further, we can think about, well, how can we take the learnings from this initiative and apply them to other priorities for the industry.
Okay. Nick, anything to add?
Well, certainly, I think the long-term goal for us, you know, there's got to be a northern star that we've got to drive towards. And certainly, we want to have diesel out of our underground mines completely. within a certain time period. So, the challenge I'm putting out to my teams and the challenge we're putting out to the OEMs, work with us so we can move away from diesel vehicles underground completely and get onto battery vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, whatever we're going to use, let's get onto that. So that's a goal I think we're setting for ourselves. And I think certainly when we go out with our year-end message to our shareholders, we'll be thinking about that quite seriously as a company. And then I think the other applications of this are very vast. If you look on the value chain, there's a whole bunch of stuff we can still do. And Mike, I think, has alluded to that. In particular, having real-time information on equipment, having sensors on equipment underground, and having a control room, getting real-time information. Where is your equipment? What is it doing? Is it idle? What is the current status of that equipment? What are the key parameters you're getting from the vehicles? That kind of information can go a whole bunch to understand exactly what's happening, and also to figure out how you can improve efficiencies, productivities, and improve safety. So I think there's a whole lot of extra work that we can do here. I think this initiative, Tom, should really be seen as part of a much broader initiative to improve our whole performance on the mining value chain. And as Mike has alluded to, this is telling us there are opportunities for us to collaborate together, work together, see what's out there, and work holistically with suppliers. So hopefully this will be a good model for us to use in other areas in the mining value chain.
Okay, very interesting. You're sketching out some future work for ICMM, perhaps in some of those areas. We'll see what we can do. Denise, what about from Caterpillar's perspective? What do you see as the next steps, and where else could this be applied?
Yeah, I think it's really important that the initiative be driven not only from the top, so having CEOs like Mike and Nick with what they're doing at their companies, but also getting the engagement all the way through to the mine site level, and recognizing that sometimes there's a disconnect between what's said at the top and what actually happens at lower levels. So, I think this drive for improvement, and as it's becoming more and more clear, is creating a pull, and it's creating that pull that we need to engage and pool our resources to make more technology available to support the initiative. But I do think it's having a clear understanding of where that investment needs to take place, so that we don't go off on a tangent that may not be where the longer term green dot is. Certainly it's very dynamic, and I think being able to adapt and accelerate our strategies is going to be really important. So as we become more nimble and have these challenges be posed to us, it's making some good decisions and partnering now more than ever before. So I think that's what we'll see. We'll definitely see, much more experimentation, and I'm hoping we can do it in a collaborative way so that we can make those right choices and accelerate it now faster than we have been able to in the past. And
do you think we've managed to accelerate that? Are you ready? Yeah.
I do. I think laying out the roadmap of where people are, where they want to be, and then it was pointed out, both Nick and Mike pointed it out. There are things we can do along that continuum in the interim as well, which I think immediately are available. And getting those things in place, that will, I think, create some momentum, and then really talk about some of the other technologies that need to be chosen, and then landing on that, and then doing some co-development. That's kind of where I see it headed for the future. So. Yeah, it's an interesting place. I also agree to the second question that you brought up, that, where there's a lot of waste along that value stream from a mining perspective is in that end-to-end supply chain. And whatever we can do to lean that up, I think every mining company challenges with that would be a common challenge that everyone has, and really will allow us to be more sustainable in the value chain for the future. So I think that definitely is a future theme that could come out and could be replicating this kind of approach.
And I interrupted you, but were you going to go into other sectors or other sort of possible applications beyond that as well?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Anything to any comment on that, Mike or Nick, in terms of the acceleration of technology choice. At what point do we jump? At what point does the egg the chicken?
Well, from my perspective, Tom, I wish it were that clean, as in just one day you wake up and it's crystal clear. I don't, I think this is going to be a matter of narrowing choices over time, and there will be a little bit of kind of parallel development, parallel choice, and sometimes that can be context specific. So there may be certain parameters of a individual mine site that warrant one choice, parameters for a different mine site that may warrant a different choice. So I don't think on any of these things we'll ever get, well, on some things we'll never get to just one single solution. But I think what we need to do is start developing or getting clear on what the parameters are that need to be met for an individual solution to accelerate that. And to start giving the OEMs a degree of confidence that amongst the myriad of potential options, here's the 2 or 3 that are likely to win over time, and start backing that with co-development effort, but ultimately purchase orders.
Yeah, I would just add that I think Mike's on the money, I agree. At the same time, we've got to pick the things that we think will give us the best success in the quickest possible time, and then put those in place. And we'll learn a lot from that already, and then see how we can actually add on to that as we go. And I think the reality is that some of the earlier solutions that we may adopt may actually be phased out when we learn more about what's out there. And we shouldn't be afraid to accept that there are challenges that will be faced with changing out technology as new stuff becomes available. So there is a little bit of a, let's call it an R&D risk in all of this, even though we are working by and large with technology that will be proven. So it's going to be an interesting pathway, and we'll have to be flexible, and we'll have to take some risks.
Well, on that note, Nick, I think that's a nice way to wrap it up. I think we've shown a lot of flexibility in the last 2 years, and we've taken some risks as organizations. As I highlighted at the beginning, the number of OEMs coming in has almost doubled. So that's paid off just in terms of generating momentum. I think we've been sending a clear signal, and we've also been conveying the urgency. And we've also learned a lot as a membership from the discussions and from the OEMs. And again, as you highlighted, gained a lot of understanding about the challenges that the suppliers are facing as well. And the point taken about technology choice is well made by Denise. So I'd like to just thank you all very much for being on the panel today, for giving your time, and thank you to those who've watched. This innovation will benefit the entire industry. We hope that it will motivate an industry shift to cleaner and safer mining vehicles beyond just ICMM members. And as a call to action to help even further accelerate progress, we would encourage any other OEMs to join. It's open to all. And we encourage the wider mining industry to use the tools and resources that are available on our own website if they're interested in learning more. Thank you once again very much for joining, and thanks for listening. Goodbye.